Well, oh my God, I have to go
I'm
somewhere.
sorry. Hold it now. Because we don't have a lot to do.
Hello and welcome to Livin La Liga Loca,
Your first and only source of news for La Primera Liga Bautista Hispana.
where the only bozos are those people who trade first-round picks for second-place finishes.
I'm Joshua Rodas.
I'm Kurt.
We've got a great show lined up for you today, where today we'll be covering just a few things.
Are we going to clip that in?
We've got a great show lined up for you today, where we'll be covering just a few of the days that have been going on so far in week one, since it's been a short week so far, and who we're going to be keeping an eye on.
But first, we've got a real special treat for you. I was able to sit down with a real-life fantasy hockey expert, and he's going to give us what he sees in week one and beyond. Roll the tape. Kurt here, joined in studio with fantasy expert Armando. Before we begin the interview, I do need to comment on the absence of my host. His child found himself in the middle of a stampede of wildebeests, and he had to go down to save him. He succeeded in saving his son and began to climb out of the canyon that this stampede was occurring in, where he desperately reached up for his brother to help him out of the canyon. His brother scratched at his hands, said, "Long live the king," and threw him down into the canyon.
Tragic.
His son later returned. It was clear he did not understand at first what had happened to Joshua, but he began to hurt. He figured it out, and then he ran away from the Pride Land. So Joshua will be here in studio later this evening.
Yes.
We turn now to fantasy expert Armando. And Armando, before we get into your analysis, I have here in my bio that you were born in a log cabin, one of 6 children. What was that like?
Well, we always struggled for food, we're constantly
Of
fighting,
course.
It's the kind of things that leave scars on your body. I have several of them. But as long as I had, a pocket knife or a box cutter, I made sure that I got at least a decent chunk of the food. But, we were okay. A couple of us didn't make it out, but I'm okay.
It's probably that rough and tumble attitude that has made you the fantasy expert you are today.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
So brave. Now, Armando, one last question before we get to your analysis. I noticed this season you have changed your team name to Embrace the Suck.
I have, yeah.
What is that about?
It's just, I was dealt a hand by myself last season, and I just couldn't recover.
One might say you drew the hand.
Yes, I did draw that hand. But this season, I feel like I'm just going to embody what was and change it into what could be and grow. So that's why I'm embracing it.
Okay, all right. Now, Armando, I have to ask you, week one is starting here. It's already started, but it starts properly on Tuesday. Armando, what are you seeing around the league this week? What should we keep an eye on? What are some matches to watch?
There's plenty matches happening, and I have a couple that I'm really, really interested in. One is my own against the previous king, Benton. I would say it is the two to be projected highest scoring teams, and it's very difficult because the projections keep flopping around. I'm very excited to see how my team performs. I'm very excited to see how his team performs. Currently, he does have a tiny lead due to the fact that he had what is basically 2 free games this week. But I'm still holding out for my team. I think they can come through. I think they can give me that first win, start off the season strong, But another of the matches that I'm very, very interested in watching are the Davids.
Oh, the David Bowl, yes.
Yeah, it's like a struggle for dominance. I feel like there's a lot more riding on this for LD, as we call him, Lesser David, and a lot less riding for the obvious better David. But it's still going to be a very exciting match to watch.
One thing I find interesting about that matchup, I feel that, it's part of the human condition to cheer for the underdog. And yet, when you come to this match, I don't know that anyone is cheering for Lesser David.
You need to make yourself likable as an underdog, Mm-hmm. But if you're constantly just starting things and just making yourself the enemy, you're not going to get a lot of supporters that way,
One might say if the underdog is, of the breed of Chihuahua, it makes it harder to cheer for.
Yeah. Really hard to drown out the yapping,
Yeah. Well, what else are you seeing, Armando? What else sticks out to you about this week?
Well, I'm excited to see how the guys who gave up a lot of picks for playoff spots, how they come back from this. I'm seeing a lot of movement from certain managers so that they can improve their position in the game, such as Jason with Willie and the boys. He's done several moves throughout the week. Previously, this week, it looks like he's really thinking about his team. But I'm not seeing a lot of movement in other managers. Like, take, for example, the Alphas. Hasn't really done much, kind of just sitting there. I know that it's very early in the season. You can't really say, hey, I need this guy, I need this guy. Maybe he's just waiting to see him if his team will pop off. But I don't know. I'd like to see a little more life from those teams that have been dealt a bad hand to begin the season.
You know, and it does make sense too. You look at Jason last year; he was far and away the most active player on the waiver wire. You know, one might say that is a great formula to finish the season second.
Yeah, excellent formula.
Now, Armando, I'm going to ask you now, as our in-house expert, I'm going to ask you to make some predictions. So, Armando, who do you think comes out of week 1 with a win?
That could be tough to say because, as we know, the games can go one way or they can go the other. We've already seen 2 games.
Those are the 2 options.
Yes. But we know that there can be very varied results, right? So out of everyone, I think, out of the Davids, I think the better David might take that one.
I think that's a safe bet.
It's very heavily leaning towards him. From Cracker Cruncher and Mix, I feel like maybe Moy might pull this one off. You know, he didn't have anything missing. He had a couple extra. Did he have a couple extra picks? I can't quite remember.
He had an extra first rounder, the only one.
First rounder. So it's still pretty close, only about 10 or 11 points in between. So I feel like that one can still flip-flop a little bit, but I think Moy may take that one. In between the Heart Knock Life and Willie and the boys, I see Jason moving a lot. So I feel like he's going to cement his place in that win. Sorry to Joshua.
Yeah. And one might say, you know, if you have a team that is made up of the players that the Heart Knock Life has, you might want to be mixing it up a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, some would say he wasted his first round pick on Reinhardt. He did perform very well last season and kind of pushed his team into that playoff position that he had. But it's very doubtful if he can do that again this year. His performance was reliant a lot upon the power play. Now, are the Panthers going to be given that many power plays this season? Who can say? So his performance, kind of up in the air. We'll see. He might do it again. In between Commission Impossible and Kings Nation, it's kind of clear who the winner's going to be. I think Commission's going to take that one. I haven't seen a lot of movement from Kings Nation using his first 2 picks for goalies. Some would say, yes, he locked the goalie section, but what happened to the rest of the players?
It raised quite a ruckus on draft night, that's for sure.
Definitely. Kind of a gear or a wrench in the whole situation, you know? And a team's made up of more than just goalies. I'm not sure if he knew that, though. Now, in between Leo and the Alphas, it's very close, but I think Leo might be taking that one. And it's mainly because, you know, his draft was just so much better than the Alphas. And as the aforementioned thing, I don't see a lot of movement from the Alphas. He's not picking up players. He's not taking advantage of teams or their games that they're playing or their matchups. I don't see a lot of life. So hopefully, maybe he changes my mind. Maybe he does something this weekend, but we have yet to see anything.
And last one.
My own match, yes. I am hopeful that I will pull through. I'm predicting.
But as a fantasy expert, what is your prediction?
I'm going to take it.
All right. You heard it here first, folks.
I'm going to take it.
From worst to first, Armando. Now, Armando, I have one final question for you to close this out. Now, as some of our viewers may know, last week we, my co-host and I, Joshua, we made our predictions for how everyone would end the season, and it caused quite a ruckus. But Armando, so now I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you on the hot seat here,
Sir.
Knowing just the virulent hatred there is out there for these predictions. If you had to predict right now, seeds 1 through 6 in the playoffs, who's it going to be?
Seeds 1 through 3 seem to be the most clear options. I believe first is going to be yourself, Commission Possible. And that's just because you had so much more to work with during the draft. Your position was, some would say, highly coveted, given your picks. So I feel with that situation, along with your pretty much good ability to continue to be a good manager throughout the season, I feel like first place is definitely within your reach.
I
A
appreciate
lot
that.
closer for most people. Now, second place, and some people may not like this one, but I think Ben is pretty close for that one too. Some would say that last time it was a streak of luck. Hey, you never know. He might get another streak of luck this year.
I'd
He's got
rather
good
be lucky
players.
than good. That's what my grandfather always said.
Exactly. Now, in third place, I'm going to go off a limb here. I'm going to say myself. I really like my team this year. I will not be repeating the same mistakes I did last year. Some people say I threw a tantrum. I threw a fit. I got mad at my team and dropped players that I shouldn't have dropped. All of this is true. But it was the inexperienced Armando. What you're seeing now is a Armando from the depths. I can't go any lower. I was at the bottom. So I learned a lot from the bottom.
Nowhere to go but up.
No, not at all. Can't dig myself deeper. Watch me though. Now, in fourth place, it's in between a few players. I like Moy's team. I like Leo's team. For me, fourth and fifth could be either one of them. It's kind of a flip or flop for me there. Now, depends on really Moy. Because Moy has, as we all saw last season, a tendency to just drop players for no apparent reason. Like Adam Fox last year. Some would say he gave our previous winner the game, the season.
Of course, the champion did say in his acceptance speech when he got his championship ring, Moy was one of the people he thanked for that very reason.
So if I'm a manager that's looking for good players, I would keep my eye on Moy's team. You never know. One of those weekends might just be on the waiver wire. And if you're high on that waiver wire, that player might just be yours. Now for sixth and the final place, I think Jason might be able to make it. Even though, yes, he didn't have a first. Did he have a second?
He did have a second.
It was the only high pick he had. But I feel like he is good enough of a manager to make the moves he needs to make to keep winning through the season. Because you don't have to have the strongest team to beat your opponent. You only have to have a team strong enough to beat your opponent of that week. And if he gets lucky enough and his team is full of injuries, he might just take it.
All right. Well, you heard it here first, folks. We would like, of course, to thank Armando, our fantasy expert, for coming in today. Armando, have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Same to you.
Back to you. Wow. Insightful.
Indeed.
Well, Joshua, let's now we're going to go into a bit of a conversation on what we're seeing week one, what we think we'll see on week one. So, Joshua, to me, the week one conversation, it starts and stops with the match between Ben and Armando, because you have the match between the first place finisher from last year and the worst place finisher.
I didn't even think about that. I just knew like Ben and Armando, pretty big contention going up there. Didn't even occur to me that it was first versus last place. It's honestly really exciting.
And to make it even more exciting, Joshua, it is the match that is projected to be the closest in the whole league, with only about 2 points projected separating the two players.
I love it, honestly. Intensity right off the bat in the season.
And now, if I have to put you on the spot here, Joshua.
All right, put me on the spot.
Armando or Ben, who comes away with the W here?
Oof.
I think right now Ben is projected to win by about 2 points. Do you think that holds?
Off of past experience with just like the last season, I want to say Ben. But I think Armando has a pretty good shot. It is extremely close. You mentioned this before too. Week one is going to be an awkward week for everybody. And I think that awkwardness is going to have a little bit of a play in here and giving Armando a little bit more of a chance.
Yeah. One thing I'm curious to see with week one, week one has essentially one fewer day than a normal week. And that really can become a killer when you look at, the mandatory 3 goalie starts in a week.
Yeah, I was actually worried about how goalie starts would be working just because of that. But I mean, it looks like it's the same rules and everything. It's just having those appearances is going to be a little bit awkward to get.
Yeah, you wouldn't think one day makes that difference, but it does.
Yeah,
I've been
having no games, and from what I understand, a lot of you guys have had no games until about Tuesday or so. So just looking at my opponent getting those extra points ahead of me, I'm a little nervous.
And I'm in the other boat where my opponent and I have had no games, and we've basically just been sitting there staring at zeros for 4 days now.
Exciting.
Now, My other pick that I think we should all be playing a close eye on, which I cannot believe it's week 1 and this matchup has already come around. But we have the David Bowl.
The
week
David
1.
Bowl. I love that name.
We have Better David versus Lesser David.
David.
And shocking no one, Better David's projected to win by a pretty significant margin.
Really?
Yeah.
I was looking at the scores earlier, and I see Lesser David having more points.
Lesser David has more points at the moment because he was able to get in on some of those Devils Sabres games. But the projections have Better David walking away with it. Although, Joshua, I spoke to Lesser David just this morning, and he tells me he feels confident in his team's ability to go away with a win.
I guess I can kind of see where that confidence is coming from. He does have one game. He does have one game more projected, but does that game really matter when the projections are that different? I've heard him make the argument that it is a little bit too early to just rely on projections.
Well, let's. Here's how I think of it, Joshua. Let's say tomorrow,
all right,
the Golden Knights call me up.
Okay.
They say, Kurt, we need a fourth line center.
Ooh.
Right? So I lace up the skates, I put the pads on, I go out there. Realistically, Joshua, if I give you an extra game in fantasy, how many extra fantasy points do you think I'm getting you?
The real point is you being on my team.
I'm going to guess 0.
He's going to get 0 points.
So I'm not sure where Lesser David's getting the confidence from, I'll be honest.
That's true. I understand that. I can get it,
And now we have the rest of this segment to win Lesser David back before he puts a thumbs down on this video.
Lesser David, have I told you lately that I love you? Have I told you there's no one else above you? You fill my heart with sadness. You take away all my gladness. Cause me troubles. That's what you do.
Joshua, what sticks out to you about week 1?
Well, honestly, I've only had time to really look at my game. Okay, let me correct that. I've had time to look at other games, but I'm so invested in the intense competition that is my own.
Now, I have to ask off the bat, would you describe your match as an intense competition?
I have 0 points. I have 0 points, and he has like 12.
But how many are you projected to get, Joshua?
Much less than he does, actually. Honestly, at this point, I talked about it before. I don't expect to win the first couple of weeks, just how I did last season. But, building up, I am hoping to get to a higher place.
Now, Joshua, you and I had a brief conversation this morning. I believe it was mentioned in that conversation. You say that your approach to fantasy is to draft poorly and then make moves.
Yes.
Is that an accurate description of what you told
That
me
is
this morning?
almost word for word exactly what I said.
Now, Joshua, how do you think that strategy is going to work for you this week?
Well, last season it seemed to work out pretty well.
Can't argue with that. Cannot argue with that.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like I was at a disadvantage, but I think I'm in a pretty similar position than I was in last season. And I can definitely understand where a lot of people are saying, like, well, it's not going to work this time around, because a lot of people know a whole lot more things this time around than they did last time, which is true, sure. But I think we are expecting too many people to have perfect games. I think there's still going to be plenty of blunders. I think people are going to be dropping people that they shouldn't have dropped. I think people are going to pick up people they shouldn't have picked up. The injuries can happen a lot. We know about the Joshua Voodoo curse last season.
Yes, that is a big question. No one has asked that. Will that curse come back this year?
Honestly, I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, it would be really cool if it does, but who knows? Maybe I'm just being too greedy.
Another thing, Joshua, that I think has not been, another curse that has not been spoken enough about this year is Cheo putting on Ben's championship ring.
Oh, that's true. That is an event I had forgotten about.
And so the question I think becomes is, does this season become particularly poor for Cheo, or does he just never win a championship in his life? Which form will the curse take? What do you think?
I think we're already getting answers to that, just the fact that Cheo, how insecure he feels for his team, firstly. Secondly, Team Envy, yeah. Secondly, he got last place in the draft, And from what I understand, he did give up picks as well, right?
He did. He gave up third, a fourth, and an 11th, I believe.
So while a lot of people would say, like, that's an argument that he maybe made poor choices or, he didn't draft well or anything like that, You can't just write out the fact that he put on Ben's ring and could have cursed himself. We warned him against it, but against our judgment, he decided, I'm going to put on this ring. I will envy that ring.
Stunned. Stunned was the reaction from everyone in the room.
Yeah, poor choices
Mhm.
all around on him.
Now, the only other notes I have here, Joshua, on this week, I do want everyone to keep a close eye on Leo's match. Leo, of course, the projected highest score for week 1. And also, all eyes on my co-host here, who is projected by quite a large margin to have the lowest score of the week.
I will make it my mission to not be the lowest score.
Well, we'll check back next week to see how that mission has gone.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited.
Do you have anything else to add, Joshua?
Nothing else to add today, good sir.
Well then, for all of us here at Livin La Liga Loca, I'm Kurt.
And I'm Joshua Rodas.
Have a great week.